As I mentioned at the outset, as we go to air, 6.5 million people right across Victoria remain in lockdown. It ends at midnight tonight. I guess nothing changes much for most people till the morning. Now, you've heard experts here tell you that this lockdown was not justified. Like the lockdowns of Perth and Brisbane for single cases, it was an overreaction. But Daniel Andrews reckons his drastic move was a success.
We're going to finish up with people being able to move freely because this short, sharp circuit breaker lockdown has worked. We said we wouldn't have this lockdown on for a moment longer than we needed to, and 5 days as we had predicted. That's what's worked.
Yeah, he says it was painful, but it was more than painful. Some people cancelled weddings, some missed funerals, thousands lost their paychecks, hundreds of businesses lost tens of thousands of dollars. Swan Hill lost the country tennis week. I could go on. It was more than an inconvenience. It was damaging and traumatic for many. So why the lockdown? On Friday, Andrews said this virus was running through Melbourne at a velocity the country had not seen before, and he said it was moving at light speed. The Premier said that this strain of the virus was smarter, faster and more infectious. Wow, an intelligent virus getting even cleverer. It was like a horror movie. But the next day, one new case. And then as the lockdown continued, 1 or 2 cases a day and 0 today. So the virus was not as fast as Andrews said, not as infectious as he said. And of course, it's not smart. It's a virus. It does not have intelligence and will never develop it. That's just unscientific, frightening rubbish. But in seeking to justify his actions, Andrews sticks with the fear campaign. He insists he's saved everyone from something more horrible.
This virus isn't gone, and 5 days, as challenging as it is infinitely better than taking a chance and then finishing up with a 5-week lockdown or something much, much worse.
In all likelihood, the lockdown did nothing to help contain the cluster. Have a listen to this question, which focuses on the fact that all the known cases seem to be linked to people who were already isolated, already locked down as part of normal contact tracing before the statewide lockdown was imposed.
Subsequently to Friday, all cases have been close contacts in lockdown anyway. So which exposure sites, which cases and their movements have actually been limited by the lockdown? You're running this counterfactual that there would have been dozens more exposure sites had the lockdown not come into effect. Which cases would have been freely roaming?
Well, I'll let Jerome speak to this in more detail, but look, after what we went through in 2020, can I just say to you that I don't accept, and I find it just absolutely inaccurate to describe what I've been saying as counterfactual. Like, Victorians know what it's like when this gets away from you.
Now, the counterfactual can never be proven. That's a problem here. Daniel Andrews can't prove that there would have been more infections without his lockdown. And neither can anyone else prove what would not have happened if Victoria had not been put through this. So we've got to listen to the experts, see what has happened here and elsewhere, and use common sense. People tend not to admit mistakes. Daniel Andrews, even if he and his team believe they had overreacted, probably would never admit it. You just hope they're more cautious next time. But ominously, the Premier admitted this might not be his last lockdown.
But I can't stand here and be honest with people and say that this will never, ever happen again. Now, the day will come when I can say that, and that's when the Commonwealth Government's rolled out vaccine to 90-something% of people across the country. Then we'll be able to be as definitive as that, but that hasn't happened yet.
Oh dear, it could be a long winter. Masks will remain mandatory in Victoria for now, indoors and outside. Home gatherings are limited to 5 people and outdoor gatherings capped at 20. But schools can reopen tomorrow. Overseas flights remain banned going into Victoria, which is an interesting one because do you remember when the Labor Party used to slam John Howard for saying this?
But we will decide who comes to this country and the circumstances in which they come.
Well, Daniel Andrews struck a very similar note today when it comes to Australians returning home to Victoria.
But I'll have more to say about when flights will resume and the circumstances in which they'll resume and the numbers associated with them when I'm ready to do that.
We'll see. By way of comparison, New South Wales is allowing 3,000 people back from overseas through hotel quarantine each week. What Andrews continues to portray as a nightmare, a diabolical dilemma, continues to be handled competently on a much grander scale in his neighbouring state.